So it's safe to say that Putin is having a bad time of it. In my last video, I was talking about how economically things are not going well for Russia. Here, I want to talk about what just happened yesterday as the Council of Europe created a new tribunal for Europe. Europe stepping up in a big way. This is a nightmare for Putin, and he has to stay in the fight, because if he doesn't, if he surrenders or loses, not just himself, but a lot of his top lieutenants are going to be in a great deal of trouble. So let's look at this. The Council of Europe has established a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. That's different than what's going on in The Hague for Putin. That's for his lieutenants. It's like kind of dealing with a loophole or people that wouldn't otherwise be tried. The tribunal has a mandate and jurisdiction to prosecute senior leadership of Russia. Let's look at this over here. President Zelensky and Secretary General of the Council of Europe have signed this document. The special tribunal will have jurisdiction to prosecute these senior officials for crime of aggression in Ukraine in violation of the UN Charter prohibition against use of armed force against another state. Quote, for the first time, a dedicated international tribunal is being created to address the crime of aggression. Established within the framework of the Council of Europe, this tribunal will hold to account those who have used force in violation of the UN Charter, applying international law without double standards, and reaffirming that Europe's security will not rest on silence or impunity, but on law, principle, and action, said Secretary Berset. And here they are signing the document. And this just happened yesterday, and so this is a big step forward. They've been working toward this for some time. Okay, now at the NATO meeting, Trump and Zelensky got to meet, and they had kind of different opinions about what was going on. Zelensky actually wore a black suit for the first time, and Zelensky said, Zelensky called the conversation with Trump, he called it productive and constructive. He said, quote, we covered all the truly important issues. He wrote that on Telegram, adding that they discussed peace efforts, a potential ceasefire, and civilian protection. Trump gave a different view of this. Trump, however, gave a different account. We didn't talk about a ceasefire. I just wanted to know how he was doing. Really? That doesn't sound right. But okay, that's his assessment of this. In a symbolic departure from his usual wartime attire, Zelensky arrived at the NATO summit in a dark suit-style jacket and collared shirt, a look he had avoided throughout the war. It was the first time in over 3 years that the Ukrainian president had opted for formal civilian clothing at a major diplomatic gathering. And so just taking the edge off of the criticism that he had that he wasn't wearing a suit before. Now, Trump, it was interesting, was asked this question, and his tone was actually fairly soft. U.S. President Donald Trump praised a question from a Ukrainian journalist whose husband serves in the Ukrainian military about air and missile defense systems. This is what she had to say, and here's how Trump answered. So let's listen to this.
Where are you from?
I'm from Ukraine.
Oh,
so my question to you is whether or not the U.S. is ready to sell anti-air missile systems, Patriot, to Ukraine. We know that Russia has been pounding Ukraine really heavily right now.
Are you living yourself now in Ukraine?
My husband is there.
Is your husband a soldier? No?
He is.
He's there now?
Yeah.
Wow, that's rough stuff, right? That's tough. And you're living here?
In Warsaw.
And you're a reporter?
I am.
Good. So let me just tell you, they do want to have the missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available, you know. They're very hard to get. We need them too. We were supplying them to Israel, and they're very effective.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to try to get them to them. Okay, that's good. That's about the best thing that came out of that kind of conversation. Trump says NATO meeting was nice. Zelensky wore a suit. The war goes on. They spoke for 50 minutes, 3 times longer than last time. Again, they left with different stories, though. Okay, Trump compared, while he was at the NATO conference, Trump compared the strike on Iran to the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The U.S. president noted that something similar happened with Tehran. Quote, I don't want to draw any parallels with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but I'm about to draw parallels to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He didn't say that part, I did. But it's essentially something similar to that ended a war, and it's ended this war, Trump said. And So he's going to take a victory lap over that. We're trying to figure out what actually happened. Did they completely obliterate those sites, or did they just damage it, or exactly what? U.S. intel says the strikes in Iran didn't destroy nuclear facilities. They only delayed the program by a few months, according to CNN. And I've seen different things. I've seen a few months. I've seen total destruction. I've seen things in between. Trump lashed out in a response, calling CNN and the New York Times fake news. Fake news. CNN, together with the failing New York Times, have teamed up in an effort to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. The nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed. Both the Times and CNN are getting slammed by the public. Now, I've seen some newer estimates that say, yes, there was more damage than what CNN and New York Times has estimated, but I don't know exactly where it is. And we have this, Gabbard says more about it, but Gabbard, remember, is a political appointee. And so it's a little suspect. The new U.S. intelligence confirms Iran's nuclear sites were destroyed. Full construction could take years, says DNI Chief Gabbard. According to newly released intelligence, Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed to such an extent that restoring operations at Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan would require complete reconstruction. Okay, but I mean, again, a political appointee is going to say something politically like what the administration wants to hear rather than, say, a bureaucrat who all they do is do this thing for all different administrations. Michael Mafal says we won't know if Trump's bombing of Iran worked until 10 years from now. If Iran doesn't have a bomb in 10 years, then we can say that the operation was successful. If Iran has a nuclear bomb before 2035, then diplomacy worked better than airstrikes. I think that's very fair. That's a very balanced way of approaching this. Mafal also went on and said politicizing intelligence is never in U.S. national interest. I would heartily agree with that, regardless of which side you're on. And he also commented about how he used to process this when he was the ambassador to Russia. In dealing with the Soviets, Reagan used to say, trust but verify. In doing arms control with the Russians when I was in the government, I used to say, don't trust, only verify. Verifying that Iran is not rebuilding its nuclear weapons program is going to be very hard. And it's going to get even harder because now the Iranian parliament voted to suspend cooperation with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. It'll no longer be allowed in the country without their approval. Iran's foreign minister said this about uranium enrichment. Quote, we made great efforts to achieve this technology, and our scientists paid a heavy price. Our people endured sanctions, and war was imposed on us over this. Naturally, no one in Iran will give up this technology. Yeah, they're going to still keep going because that's what they do. Okay, so this morning, I talked about this. Che Baos was complaining about the wife of the grossly corrupt dictator, a non-NATO member, that's Zelensky, stands in the first row at the NATO summit grinning. This tells you everything that you need to know about another globalist gang of bullies and frauds. And he's talking about her. Well, that wasn't her. And I said that it was Meloni. It's not Meloni. It's not Zelenska. And it's not Meloni. Someone corrected me. It's Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, who, yeah, okay, you can see it now, right? So, yeah, I got it wrong, too. All right, I'm going to leave you with this. Putin Squad. That is these old ladies that sit around and talk about how wonderful Putin is. Putin Squad think it was Putin who stopped the war between Israel and Iran. They're recording themselves talking about this. The Iranian foreign minister came to Putin, and all of a sudden, it was all over. Okay, listen to this. Today, the world has shifted its focus from the war in Ukraine to Iran. Yeah, that's how they're framing this. The Iranian foreign minister came to Putin, and in a very short time, magically, the war was ended. How about that? Because he came to Putin, and Putin fixed it, right? Okay, so they go on and they say this. What does this indicate? We always say this, Vladimir, and they say it respectfully, Vladimir Vladimirovich, you are simply a world power. Okay. You hold the whole world on your shoulders. Stay that way. As long as you are here, there will be peace throughout the world, which is one of the most ironic things I've ever heard. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you are the world's peacekeeper, and that's also ironic. You are bringing peace to the entire planet. We are very grateful to you and very proud of you. Our president, Vladimir Vladimirovich, stop this bloodshed in a mere 24 hours. Well, his 3-day war isn't going so hot, is it? I mean, we're on day, what, 1,219 days of a 3-day war. So, all right, my friends, I'll leave you with that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.